My name is Nell Upton. I'm 35 years old. And on the night of my 35th birthday, I sat alone at a table set for 8. I had confirmed that dinner twice with my family. And my mom had promised me the night before on the phone that everyone would be there. Nobody came. When I finally called my mom, she laughed. There was music behind her, glasses clinking, my sister's voice somewhere in the noise. What I did next, one photo, one caption, brought my parents to my front door in a rage and set off a chain of events that ended with me standing at a microphone in front of 90 people, holding an envelope nobody expected. But here's what none of them knew. That night at the restaurant, I was already done paying for my seat at that table. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. Welcome back to Last Laugh Stories, where quiet people finally stop paying for seats at tables that were never theirs. We tell stories about family, betrayal, and the kind of peace you have to walk through fire to earn. If that speaks to you, drop a comment below, and be sure to subscribe, because this one starts with an empty table and ends somewhere I never saw coming. Let me tell you who I was before that birthday because it matters. I've been a pediatric ICU nurse for 12 years, night shift mostly, at St. Ambrose Children's, a hospital outside Cleveland. I've done chest compressions on a 4-year-old. I know what it is to wait for a heartbeat that doesn't come. You learn a certain steadiness in that work. You also learn to be the one who handles things. And in my family, I was the one who handled everything. I was the one who remembered. Birthdays, anniversaries, the date of my dad's stress test, the name of my aunt's insurance agent. When my parents refinanced the house, I read the paperwork. When Aunt Trish got audited, I sat at her kitchen table with a shoebox of receipts until 2 a.m. I kept a color-coded calendar on my fridge with everyone's appointments on it. And I traded shifts at work, good shifts, weekend-off shifts, so I would never miss a family occasion. 12 years of nights, and I never once missed a Sunday dinner. I'm not telling you this to make myself sound like a saint. I'm telling you because for most of my life, I thought that was what love looked like. You show up, you carry things, you make yourself useful, and the people you carry will love you for it. Being needed and being loved look almost identical from a distance. It took me 35 years and one empty table to finally see the difference. And once I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing it anywhere I looked. Sunday dinners at my parents' house had a choreography to them, and if you watched closely, you could see the whole system at work. That spring, my sister Dana had news. Her boyfriend Grant, Dr. Grant Price, orthopedic surgeon, 34, teeth like a catalog, had been featured in the Hospital Foundation's magazine, half a page, with a photo. My mom stopped the entire dinner. She had Dana hold the magazine next to her face while she took pictures, then retook them because the light was wrong, then posted 3 of them before the roast was cold. Her caption said, "Les doesn't even cover it." That same week, my unit had passed a state inspection with a perfect score. 12 years I'd been on that unit, and a perfect score almost never happens. I mentioned it quietly, somewhere between the salad and the gravy. My mom said, "That's nice, honey. Pass the rolls." Then she turned back to Dana and asked what venue Grant's parents preferred for an engagement party, should there ever be one. Later, drying dishes. My mom said something she'd said my whole life, the way other mothers say, drive safe. We show up where it counts, Nell. She meant it as wisdom. She'd built her whole life on it. Church Committee Garden Club, the Upton family Christmas card that took 4 weekends to perfect. I nodded because I always nodded. On the drive home to my duplex, 20 minutes of dark highway, I did the math I never let myself do out loud. 3 photos of Dana that night. None of me. Not that night. Not that year. I wasn't bitter about it. Not yet. I was just counting. The way you count a patient's breaths without deciding anything about them. 2 years before all this, my dad had triple bypass surgery. And I want you to see how that went because it explains everything that came after. I was the one who noticed his color at Easter and made him see a cardiologist. I used 9 vacation days. I slept in the chair beside his bed for 9 nights, the vinyl kind that exhales when you move. I managed his medications for 8 weeks of recovery, drove him to cardiac rehab every Tuesday and Friday, and taught my mom how to check his blood pressure without panicking at the numbers. My mom's contribution was different. She organized the prayer chain at church, which is to say, she called 11 women and accepted their casseroles. When it was over and Dad was walking the block again, she stood up at a church luncheon and said, "We got through it as a family." She showed everyone the photo she'd taken with the surgeon, her hand on his arm like they'd scrubbed in together. My name didn't come up. I stood in the back with a cup of lukewarm coffee and clapped with everyone else. And here's the part I'm not proud of. It didn't even hurt that much. That's how normal it had become. The nurse in me recognized the pattern the way you recognize a rhythm on a monitor. Effort that photographs well gets celebrated. Effort that doesn't photograph gets absorbed. My dad squeezed my hand once in the hospital when the anesthesia was wearing off and whispered, "Don't tell your mother how scared I was." That was the truest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years. I held on to it longer than I should have. If you want to understand what I eventually gave up, you need to see the cottage. My grandma Iris, my dad's mother, had a 2-bedroom cottage on the lake at Geneva, an hour and 15 minutes northeast of my place. Every summer of my childhood lived there, zinnias along the fence, a recipe box with her handwriting going soft at the corners, a porch swing that creaked in a specific key I can still hear. Iris was the one person who never asked me to be useful. When she died 6 years ago, the cottage went into a family trust and my mom, organized, respectable, good with committees, was named trustee. The first winter, a notice came to my parents' house, delinquent property taxes, county auction list. My mom had simply not paid them, not out of hardship, out of neglect. The cottage wasn't a place she performed anywhere, so it didn't exist on her calendar. I drove to the county office on my day off and paid the balance in person, a little over $2,000 before anyone else in the family even understood what the notice meant. And then I just kept paying every year for 6 years, quietly out of my nursing salary. I never told anyone. It wasn't a strategy. The cottage was the last thing of Iris's I could still touch. And the key to it lived on my key ring between my house key and my hospital badge. I thought paying quietly would keep it safe. I hadn't understood yet what all that quiet was costing me, or that in my family anything you do in silence gets counted as nothing at all. So my 35th birthday, I decided to do something I had never once done. I planned a party for myself, not a big one. Dinner for 8 at Harlow's, the old steakhouse downtown with the green lamps and the good bread, the place Grandma Iris used to take me when I was small and needed to feel seen. I reserved the round table in the back for a Saturday in May, 6:30. The guest list was my whole world. My parents, Dana and Grant, Aunt Trish and Uncle Phil, and my best friend Marisol from the unit. I ordered a cake from the bakery on 4th Street, lemon with raspberry, and had them write, "Happy 35th, Nell and the buttercream." I even printed Little Menace at the library because I'm the kind of person who prints Little Menace. I know how that sounds, but 35 felt like a threshold. I'd spent every family occasion of my adult life as staff, organizing, confirming, driving people, remembering. Just once, I wanted to sit at a table that someone else showed up to. I told myself 35 was the year I stopped being the coordinator and got to be the guest of honor for a single evening. 2 hours, 1 dinner, 8 chairs. It seemed like such a small thing to want. I remember standing in the bakery, watching the woman pipe my name in white icing, and feeling almost embarrassed by how happy it made me. I should have known better than to schedule hope on a Saturday my mother controlled. But you don't know a wave is a wave until you're under it. You just see the water pulling back and think, look, more beach. I want to be clear about something, because I've replayed that week 100 times. I did not walk into it blind. I saw the signs and I acted on them. Dana had gone vague in the group chat, answering my dinner reminder with a thumbs up instead of words. I knew Grant's parents were flying in from Charlotte that weekend. Dana had mentioned it, then unmentioned it, The way you slide a plate off a table. My mom was on her phone more than usual, stepping into the hallway to talk, so I confirmed. Tuesday, I posted in the family chat. Harlow's Saturday 60/30 tables under my name. Hearts from Trish, nothing from Dana, a thumbs up from Dad, which meant Mom had shown him how again. Friday night, I called my mother directly because I have learned the hard way that my family's silence is a language. I said, "Mom, tomorrow's still good. I need a head count for the table." And my mother said, "I can still hear the exact pitch of it. Of course we'll be there, sweetheart. Don't fuss. You always fuss." I hung up, reassured, which was the point. I had no way to see the message she sent an hour later to everyone in the family except me. I wouldn't learn what it said for another 2 days. If I had seen it that Friday night, everything after the photo, the caption, my parents in my driveway, the envelope at the anniversary party, none of it would have happened. Or maybe it all would have happened anyway, just slower. Some things are already true long before one night forces you to look at them straight. Saturday, 60:15. I got to Harlow's early because of course I did. The round table looked beautiful. White cloth, green lamps throwing soft light, my little printed menus at each place, and the cake waiting in the back with my name on it. I sat where I could see the door. 6:30 came and went, and I thought traffic. At 6:50, I texted the group chat. We're in the back room. Then quietly mark itself seen. Seen by Mom, seen Mom. Seen by Dana. No reply. At 7:15, the waiter, a kid maybe 25 with kind eyes, refilled my water and asked if I wanted to order an appetizer while I waited. At 7:40, he came back and lit the candle that had guttered and didn't say anything at all, which was worse and also kinder. Marisol was the only one who'd answered. She was stuck at the hospital covering a staffing hole. The kind of emergency that's actually an emergency. And her texts were getting increasingly furious on my behalf. "Where are they, Nell? Where is your family?" I sat with my back straight because 12 years of night shifts teaches you not to collapse in front of strangers. At 80:00, the kitchen sent out the cake because the staff had decided somewhere between pity and decency that a woman alone at a table for 8 on her birthday should at least have her cake. They brought it with 8 forks. I looked at those 8 forks for a long time. At 8:20, I finally called my mom. She picked up on the 4th ring. Behind her voice, there was music, a ripple of laughter, the bright clatter of a party in full swing. And then when I asked where everyone laughed, my mother laughed. Not a cruel laugh. That's the part people never believe. It was light, social, the laugh she used with committee women. "Oh, honey," my mom said, "we had more important plans." Behind her, a spoon chimed against a glass. She explained it the way you'd explain a scheduling fix to a vendor. Grant had proposed to Dano on Thursday. Grant's parents were only in town through Sunday, so they'd put together an engagement dinner at the Beaumont Room. The Beaumont Room, she repeated as if the venue settled the ethics. And everyone had understood. Everyone was there. It had all come together beautifully. "Your birthday comes every year, Nell," she said gently, like she was being reasonable with a child. "An engagement is once." I asked why nobody told me. I kept my voice level. The waiter was pretending not to listen. And my mom said the sentence that rearranged my entire life. "We knew you'd make it about how you." Somewhere behind her, my sister's laugh rose and broke like a wave. I learned later from Aunt Trish about Friday's message. Mom had told the whole family the birthday dinner was being rescheduled. That she'd square it with me. "Don't mention it. You know how Neil gets." They hadn't stood me up. Not in their minds. They'd been managed. There was a version of that phone call where I said everything. 35 years of everything. Instead, I looked at the cake with my name on it and the 8 cold forks. And I said, "I understand." And I did. And snorts, that's the thing nobody tells you about moments like this. The pain comes later. What comes first is clarity, cold and clean as instrument light. And for the first time in 35 years, I understood my family completely. If you've ever sat at a table like that, set for people who chose somewhere shinier, I made the story for you. Tell me in the comments what the moment was when you finally understood your place in someone's plans. And if you want to know how 8 empty chairs became the fullest table I've ever had, stay with me and subscribe so you don't lose this story. I didn't make a scene because there was no one to make it for. I paid for the table. I tipped the waiter 40 on a dinner nobody ate because he had read my candle and that deserved something. I then asked for a box for the cake, and then standing by that beautiful useless table, I did the one thing that would turn out to matter. I took a photograph. 8 empty place settings. 8 forks fanned around a lemon cake that said, "Happy 35th, Nell." The candle still burning. I didn't know yet what the photo was for. I only knew I needed proof that it had happened, because I knew my family and I knew that by Monday, the story would already be softening in their hands. A mix-up, a misunderstanding. You know how Neil gets. In my family, the past was clay and my mother was the potter. A photograph is fired clay. It keeps its shape. I stood there while the waiter boxed my cake, and I felt something I can only describe as a door swinging slowly on its hinge. Not slamming, nothing dramatic, just a quiet change in the architecture of my life. On my way out, I turned back once. I don't know why. 2 busboys were already clearing the table. The cloth was coming off. The candle was out. My little printed menace were stacked for the trash. It had taken them 90 seconds to erase a party I'd spent 3 weeks planning. I stood in the doorway doing the math on that, and then I carried my own birthday cake to my own car in the rain, and my phone buzzed against my hip. Marisol, 3 missed calls. Then a text. "Don't you dare drive home. Address incoming. You're spending your birthday with people." Family is overrated. 40 minutes later, I was standing in Marisol Vega's backyard under a string of cafe lights, holding a paper plate, while the night shift of the St. Ambrose Pediatric ICU sang "Happy Birthday" to me around a folding table. Marisol had made exactly 4 phone calls from the hospital break room. That was all it took. Rosa brought tamales her husband had just made. Dee brought a cooler and a speaker. Jun, who never talks, brought a card the whole unit had signed at some point during the week, which meant this hadn't been thrown together out of pity. They'd been planning to celebrate me all along, quietly, the way night shift does everything. Marisol's 12-year-old daughter appointed herself DJ and played what she called old people music from a 2009. We cut the Harlow's cake on a picnic table with a plastic knife. It was, and I say this with a straight face, one of the best nights of my life. At some point, Marisol stood on the porch step, raised a red cup, and said, "To Nell, who shows up for everybody. Tonight, we show up for her." That was the whole toast. Nobody photographed the surgeon. Nobody mentioned a venue. I stood there under the cheap lights with buttercream on my thumb and thought about the thing I'd been counting all my life without naming it. Nobody at that table had known me longer than 10 years. Everybody at that table had shown up in under an hour. Before I left, Dee snapped a picture of all of us crowded around the cake, laughing. My name still legible in the icing. Later that night in bed, I looked at my phone and realized I now had 2 photographs side by side from the same birthday. And that's when the idea arrived. Quiet as a key in a lock, I woke up Sunday to 41 new photos in the family group chat, which I was apparently still in. The Beaumont room did look lovely. Dana's ring caught the light in every frame. There were photos of the toasts, of Grant's parents beaming, of my mom mid-laugh with her hand on the sleeve of Grant's father, of the towering white cake. You get one guess who'd chosen it. I scrolled the whole album twice, waiting to feel something jagged. But the clarity from the night before was still doing its work. Then a private text from my mom arrived, and I want to quote it exactly because it's a masterpiece of its kind. "Beautiful night. Don't forget to congratulate your sister. It'll look strange if you're the only one who hasn't. Not a word about Harlow's. Not a word about the cake or the 8 chairs or the phone call. The birthday had simply been deleted, and my only remaining role was to protect the optics of the engagement." A few minutes later, Aunt Trish called, flustered and kind. "Honey, I'm so sorry we missed your dinner. Your mom said you'd rescheduled it because of the engagement. There it was, the Friday message. Rescheduled. I'd like to tell you I was shocked. But the nurse in me just noted it the way you noted a symptom that confirms the diagnosis. My whole family believed I had graciously stepped aside because the person who controls the information controls the story, and my mother had been the family's sole news outlet for 40 years. I thanked Trish. I did not correct her. Correcting her one relative at a time would have taken the rest of my life. There was a faster way to tell the truth, and it was sitting in my camera roll. I spent Monday off work cleaning my duplex like it had wronged me, and everywhere I looked, the patterns surfaced. That's the thing about clarity, it works backward. In my hall closet, still in its cardboard tube, was my Nursing Excellence Award from the State Association. 3 years old, never framed. My mom had a wall of frames going up the staircase. Dana's dance recital, Dana's graduation, the famous Christmas card years. The family portrait from 11 years ago hangs in the middle of it. The one taken the weekend, I was working a double covering for a nurse whose son had been in a car wreck. They'd gone ahead and taken it without me. Nobody ever suggested a retake. When I asked about it once, my mom said, "You're always welcome to be in things, Nell. You just have to actually be there." I found my nursing school, pinning ceremony program in a shoebox. 12 years old now. 2 empty seats in the second row that day. Dana had a piano recital across town and recital photograph better than pinning ceremonies. And on the shelf above it, in the carton of papers I'd cleared out of Grandma Iris's desk 6 years ago, an old snapshot I'd never really studied. My mother at 16, standing beside a piano, trophy of her own. Her smile stretched tight as a wire. Her own mother. My grandmother Margaret. My mother's mother, a woman I remember mostly as a cold room. Standing behind her with a hand clamped on her shoulder. Somewhere in that photo was a girl performing for her own mother, waiting to be counted. I looked at it for a while. Then I put it face down in the carton because I wasn't ready to understand my mother yet. I was still busy being her daughter. That night, I sat on my bed with my phone and opened the 2 photographs from Saturday. Here's what I posted, and you can judge me if you want. 2 photos side by side. First, 8 empty place settings. The candle, the cake with my name. Second, a folding table crowded with night shift nurses, paper plates, my face mid-laugh, that same cake half gone. The caption took me an hour to get right, and in the end it was short. Turned 35 this weekend. Booked a table for 8. My family had more important plans, so my real family threw me a party in a backyard on 90 minutes notice after a 12-hour shift. Thank you for showing up. That's all love is in the end. People who show up. I did not tag my mother. I did not mention the engagement or Dana or 40 years of anything. I read it twice. It wasn't cruel. It was just true. And I had spent my whole life keeping true. Things quiet to protect people who wouldn't cross a parking lot for me. My thumb hovered over the button, and I thought about the wave pulling back from the beach, and I thought, let it come. I pressed post. Then I set the phone face down on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, and slept 9 hours for the first time in a month. My old life ended while I was asleep, quietly the way it had lived. By the time I woke up, the phone had been buzzing for hours. Comments, shares, messages, 3 missed calls from numbers I knew, and 1 voicemail from my mother that began in a tone I'd never heard her use with me with my full name, Nell Catherine Upton. The way you'd read a name off a warrant. You have to understand the scale of things in a town like ours. The post didn't go viral. Nothing in Maple Glen goes viral. It did something worse. It got seen by exactly the 300 people my mother had spent 40 years performing for. Churchwomen, garden club, the neighbors from the old street. By Tuesday, it had a life of its own. Comments from nurses I'd trained, from parents of kids who'd come through my unit. This woman held our family together for 9 days. Happy birthday, Nell. And then fatally from 2 women in my mother's own circle. One wrote, "I's this Carol's daughter." The other just left a single line. Some people count best when they think no one's watching, which I chose not to decode. Aunt Trish called again, and this time her voice had changed. "Nell, honey, what really happened Saturday?" So, I told her plainly, no flourishes, the reservation, the 2 confirmations, the Friday night phone call, the 4th ring laugh. Trish went very quiet and then said, "She told us you'd rescheduled." And I could hear a lifetime of small, managed stories reorganizing themselves in my aunt's head. Meanwhile, Dana texted me for the first time since the proposal. No congratulations owed anymore, apparently. Wow. Really? On my engagement weekend, my sister, who had sat at the Beaumont room knowing where I was and said nothing, was now the injured party. I didn't answer. I'd learned something in the last 72 hours. In my family's economy, my silence had always been counted as agreement. Now, for the first time, my silence was being counted as a threat. Tuesday night, 900. I was watering the zinnia, seedlings on my kitchen windowsill when headlights swept across the front of my duplex and sat there. Engine running. I knew the sound of that engine. My mother didn't knock. She never knocks on doors she considers hers. She came through my front door already mid-sentence, coat still buttoned. My dad 2 steps behind her with his hands in his jacket pockets. "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" "No." "Hello, no." "Are you all right?" My mother stood in the middle of my living room, like a health inspector, and cataloged everything wrong with my life in one sweep of her eyes. And then she got to the point. The post was humiliating. The post was vindictive. Sharon from church had called her, Sharon of all people. I was to take it down tonight and put up a correction. She'd already drafted one. That's the detail that still gets me. She had it typed in her phone. Explaining there had been a scheduling misunderstanding, and the family had celebrated me privately. A scheduling misunderstanding. I repeated, "Mom, you told them I rescheduled. You told me you were coming. Both of those can't be true. And you wrote both of them." For a second, something crossed her face. Not guilt. Recalibration. Then I did what any mother would do. There wasn't time to do both events properly, and an engagement is once in a lifetime. I wasn't going to let this family look divided on the biggest weekend of your sister's life. There it was. Not sorry. Logistics. I looked past her at my dad, who had picked up the framed photo of Grandma, Iris, on my bookshelf, and was studying it like it required his full attention. And I said quietly, "It's my birthday photo, Mom. It stays up." My father set the frame down with enormous care, walked out to the car, and started the engine. Through the window, I watched him sit there in the dark. My mother buttoned her top button and delivered her exit line like a woman leaving a tip. "Take it to down, Nell, or you will regret what happens next." She said it the way you'd read a recipe. What happened next was a master class, and I say that with real respect, the way you'd admire a surgeon's hands when he takes something out of you. My mother did not call me again. She went to work on everyone around me. Within a week, the family narrative had a new draft. Nell is going through something. Nell has been overwhelmed at work. You know, nurses the burnout. We're very worried about her. She said it at church, at the garden club, on the phone tree. She posted a photo from some Easter years ago, all 5 of us squinting on the porch, captioned, "Family is everything. Forgiveness is everything." It collected 97 likes and a chorus of amens. 2 separate cousins forwarded it to me with messages like, "Your mom's really hurting. Maybe just smooth it over. That's how the choir works. It doesn't argue with you. It just sings louder until your one note sounds like noise. And I'll be honest with you, because this story only works if I'm honest. I sat at my kitchen table more than one night, that week with my thumb on my phone, composing the counterpost. I had the receipts, literally the confirmation texts, Trish's account of the Friday message. I could have laid it all out, dated and screenshotted, and buried her. I didn't post any of it. Some of that was strategy. You don't outshout a choir. You just stop singing in it, but most of it was something older. I'd watched my mother spend 40 years winning, exactly that kind of war. And I had no interest in inheriting her weapons. That was the week I started to understand the difference between fighting a person and refusing a game. My silence drove her to escalate, An escalation for the first time in her life started costing her precision. The costs of my quiet came due anyway, one small invoice at a time. The formal engagement party invitations went out on heavy cream card stock. Trish showed me hers, apologetic, at the grocery store, and my name was not on one. I found out I'd been removed from the family group chat when I went to check a date, and the thread had simply vanished. 40 years of family logistics gone like a door painted over. Removed by admin. My cousin Beth canceled our standing coffee twice, then stopped proposing new dates. Her texts going polite and flat. The tone you use with a coworker on their way out. Aunt Trish still called, but in whispers from her car like I was a station she could only get at certain hours. I understood. Trish bends whichever way the strongest wind blows. And my mother is a weather system. I want to say the isolation didn't touch me. It did. You can know a room is rigged and still feel the cold when they lock it. I picked up extra shifts, ate dinner with Marisol's family twice a week, and kept watering the zinnias on the windowsill, which had gotten leggy and determined, like everything Iris ever planted. Work studied me the way it always has. Sick kids are honest. Monitors don't have subtext. Then on a Thursday, 2 things happened an hour apart. Dana texted, "Can I come by Saturday?" Just me. The first unmanaged sentence my sister had sent me in years. And the mail brought a thick envelope, my name typed, the return address a law office in town I'd never heard of. I stood the envelope against the fruit bowl and looked at it all evening. Some letters you don't open until you have a witness, even if the only witness is your own steadied breathing. Dana came Saturday morning without makeup, which for my sister is a form of disarmament. She sat at my kitchen table, wrapped both hands around the coffee mug, and for a while we talked about nothing. The wedding venue short list, a kid from her office. Then she looked at the envelope still propped against my fruit bowl and then at me and said, "She's not going to stop, you know." I asked which part of not stopping we were discussing. And my sister, who has spent her whole life as the family's favorite exhibit, said something I never expected. "You think I don't know the game, Nell? I know the game better than you do. It's just easier when you're winning it." She said it without pride. For 1 second, I saw her at 9 years old being turned toward a camera. Then the second passed, and she was Dana again, here on assignment, whether she admitted it or not. The offer she'd been sent to preview was this. Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary party next month. The whole family, everyone who mattered. There would be a moment. Dana said Mom had literally called it a moment, where I would say a few words, something warm, something healing, an apology without the word apology, and then everything would go back. I'd be at the wedding, the chat would read me. The whole year would be filed under a rough patch. 20 minutes of your life, Dana said tired. You stand up. You say Mom raised us right and family is complicated and you're sorry it got messy. She gets her picture. You get your family back. Everybody eats cake. She left without seeing me open the envelope, which is a shame in a way, because the envelope was the other half of the offer. The letter was from the attorney for the Iris M. Upton Family Trust. 3 paragraphs Cordis as a scalpel. The trustee, Carol Upton, was evaluating the disposition of the trust's primary asset, the lakefront property at Geneva, in light of ongoing maintenance and administrative burdens. The letter further noted in language, somebody had been paid to make this smooth, that voluntary payments made by third parties toward property expenses conferred no ownership interest and no standing whatsoever. Third parties, I read it 4 times standing at the counter. She knew. Of course she knew. 6 years of county tax records with my name on the receipts. And my mother had never once mentioned it because unmentioned debts were assets in her economy, too. Translated out of legalese, the letter said, I know about your little arrangement with your grandmother's ghost. It buys you nothing. And if you keep embarrassing me, I will sell the one place on earth you still feel loved. Monday, I paid $150 for 30 minutes with a trust attorney named Aino Kafer, a calm woman with reading glasses on a chain who looked at the documents and gave it to me straight. Sole trustee, broad discretion. No co-beneficiary standing I could realistically enforce. And no 6 years of voluntary tax payments created no interest in Ohio. You could make her life difficult, she said, for a while at real expense, and you would very likely lose. I thanked her because she'd given me something better than hope. She'd given me the exact dimensions of the cage. I want that on the record. I saw the trap. I took it to a professional. I did everything a careful person does. The door was legal load-bearing and locked from her side. My mother had found the one thing I still paid for in silence and put a price tag where my grandmother's name used to be. Quick pause, because I know some of you are sitting with something like this right now. If you've ever had love dangled over your head like a bill coming due, you know this feeling. Comment the word cottage if someone ever held a place or a person hostage to keep you obedient. What I chose at that anniversary party still costs me, and I'd choose it again. Stay with me and subscribe if you haven't. That weekend, I finally went looking for the tax receipts because some part of me was already assembling something, though I couldn't have told you what. The receipts were in the hall closet, in the shoe box with my pinning ceremony program, and in Iris's carton on the shelf above. Where I'd put it face down weeks before was the photograph of my mother at 16 beside her piano trophy. This time I turned it over, and this time I found the letter folded into thirds behind the photo in Grandma Iris's handwriting, addressed to her sister and never mailed. Iris wrote about her new daughter-in-law with a mix of pity and dread I recognized instantly, because I'd felt it myself without the vocabulary. Carol practiced 4 hours a day as a girl. Iris wrote her mother timed it. Margaret told me so herself at the rehearsal dinner. Proud as a general, there was a chart on the ice box. The child cried if she placed a second. From fear, Iris wrote, not disappointment. Margaret, the cold room from my childhood. I sat on my hallway floor and looked at my mother, 16 years old, smiling like it was a bill she couldn't pay. And I understood something I'd been dodging for a month. My mother wasn't born a marketplace. She was raised in one. She'd been counted and charted and timed. And she'd survived it by getting so good at the game that she never had to feel the losing side of it again. And then she'd raised her daughters inside it. The way people raise children inside a religion, because it's the only country they know. Understanding that didn't unlock a single door. It didn't make the trusty letter kinder or the empty chairs less empty. It just made the whole house sadder, and it settled one thing for certain. I wasn't fighting my mother. I was fighting the thing that ate her. And you don't beat a thing like that. You just refuse to feed it your own children someday. Then my mother, sensing weeks of silence, the way a spider reads a web, changed keys. The Tuesday before the anniversary party, a text arrived, warm as fresh bread. Sweetheart, this has all gone on too long, and it's breaking my heart. Come Saturday, say a few words from the heart. That's all anyone needs, and it's forgiven. All of it. Dana wants you standing up at that wedding. Dad misses you, and I think you know the cottage should stay in this family for your children someday. Everything can go back to normal. I read it maybe 30 times. I want to be honest about what that text did to me, because if you've been in this story, you know it worked. Every lever in it was fitted to a groove, worn into me over 35 years. The wedding. My dad, children I didn't even have yet already deployed, and underneath it all the cottage, the porch swing, the Zenas, the one door I couldn't bear to hear close. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote the apology. It took me 2 hours, and it was good. It thanked her for the sacrifices. It called the summer a misunderstanding that grew in the telling. It said, family is complicated, and I'm sorry for my part in the mess. It was gracious, warm, and completely deniable. And I read it out loud to the Zenas. And here is what actually scared me, standing in my own kitchen, listening to my own voice. It was excellent. 35 years of practice will do that. I had gotten so good at buying my seat back that I could do it in my sleep, in her mother tongue, at committee polish. I saved the draft. I told myself I was being practical. Then I went to work, and the night shift did what it always does. It told the truth. We had a 6-year-old on the unit that week, post-op cardiac Rocky. Her mother was maybe 24, worked days at a packing warehouse. And every single night she appeared at 7 and sat in the bad, vinyl chair and held her daughter's foot through the blanket because the wire, zine, and lines made her afraid to hold anything else. Night after night, she didn't post about it. There was nobody to post to, I gathered. No audience, no committee, no cake. Around 300 in the morning, I found her asleep, sitting up, hands still closed around that small foot, and I stood in the doorway longer than any of my rounds required. Nobody was watching that woman love her kid. It counted anyway. It counted more than anything I'd seen in a ballroom. And standing there in the doorlight, I finally had the whole thing in one sentence. The sentence 35 years had been trying to teach me. Love you have to earn is just wages. That's all it is, wages. And I had been the hardest working employee at a family business that was never going to make me a partner. Apologizing for asking about the benefits, I clocked out at 7, sat in my car in the staff lot, and deleted the apology draft without rereading it. Then I texted my mother a short answer to her long offer. "I'll be there Saturday." She replied in under a minute. "Wonderful, sweetheart. Wear the blue dress." And I could feel her filing the wind. Let her file it. That evening at home, I did something small and irreversible. I worked the cottage key off my key ring. It left a little bare gap between my house key and my hospital badge. And I dropped it into an envelope with 6 years of county tax receipts. I wasn't going to that party to speak from the hurt. I was going to hand mine back. The Fairview Country Club ballroom was my mother's masterpiece, and I mean that architecturally. 40 years of marriage, 90 guests, and every one of them curated. The churchwomen, the garden club, the old neighbors from Lennon Street, Grant's parents flown in again and seated where the light was good. A banner in gold script, a 3-piece band playing standards at conversation volume, a 2-tier cake that I'd bet a paycheck was chosen from the same bakery, binder as the engagement cake. 1 page later, Dana and Grant moved through the room like a closing argument. My dad stood near the bar in the suit he's owned since the second Bush administration, shaking hands. And when he saw me come in, his eyes did something complicated and then went back to the safety of hellos. I'd come alone. Marisol had offered. Offered isn't the word. She'd practically armed herself. But this was my mother's stage, and I needed to walk it without a witness to perform for. That was the whole point. No audience of mine. On a side table by the guest book, I found the printed programs. Cocktails, dinner, dancing, toasts. And there, second from the end, between the toasts and the cake, a few words from our daughter Nell. She'd typeset my surrender. It was scheduled between the champagne and the frosting, 20 minutes exactly as advertised, and reading my own name in that elegant little font, I felt weirdly calm. The way you feel when the ambiguous scan finally comes back. And at least now, you know what you're dealing with. In my clutch, the envelope sat flat and heavy like a passport. An older woman from the church squeezed my arm on her way past. "So glad you're doing this, dear," she whispered. "Your mother has been through so much," I said. "She has, and meant it in ways the woman will never know." Dinner happened around me. I ate what I could, complimented the chicken to a retired dentist, and watched my mother work the room like weather moving across a lake. Then the band softened. The lights did their trained little dim, and my mother took the microphone with the ease of a woman who has never once been interrupted in her own venue. Her toast was technically beautiful. 40 years. The house on Linden Street, rising 2 girls, a photo montage bloomed on a screen, Dana at recital, Dana's graduation, the Christmas cards, and me appearing in the margins like a data stamp. And then my mother's voice found its destination. "Families get tested," she said, letting the room lean in. "This year tested ours, but I raised my daughters to know that at the end of the day, family is everything, and real daughters always find their way home." She turned to me with the smile I'd been managed by for 35 years, held out her hand toward the microphone stand, and said, "Nell, I believe you have something you'd like to share. 90 faces rotated toward my table, like a field of satellite dishes. Somewhere to my left, Aunt Trish had her hand pressed flat against her sternum. Dana was studying the tablecloth. My dad by the bar had gone very still. A man watching weather he'd spent 40 years learning not to predict. I stood smooth the blue dress. I'd worn it. Costumes are cheap, I decided. And I needed the exits clear and walked to the front, carrying my clutch, which nobody thought anything of. A woman's hands are allowed to be full. My mother had scripted 30 seconds of my life for me. I had brought an envelope instead. The microphone was still warm from her hand when I took it. I kept my voice at the register I use at 3 in the morning with frightened parents, because it turns out that's the register Truth likes. Happy 40th, Mom, Dad. 40 years is a real thing and I honor it. I meant that too. Most of you have known our family a long time. My mom taught me my whole life that we show up where it counts. And she's right. She's more right than she knows. I looked at her then. She was still smiling, but her eyes had started doing arithmetic. 6 years ago, when Grandma Iris died, the taxes on her cottage at Geneva went unpaid, and the county scheduled it for auction. I paid them? I've paid them every year since, out of my nursing salary, quietly. Because that porch was the one place this family ever let me be a daughter instead of staff. I'm not telling you this to embarrass anyone. I'm telling you because you all know me as the reliable one, and I want you to understand exactly what I'm retiring from. I opened the clutch and set the envelope on the head table, propped against the 2-tier cake with a little gold banner, said 40 blessed years. The key in 6 years of receipts, the taxes are paid through December. Mom, after that the cottage is all yours to keep or sell. And so is the story you'll tell about tonight. I know it'll be a good one. You always were the better author. A ripple went through the room. Half laugh, half held breath. I came tonight because you asked me to speak from the heart. So here it is, the whole thing. I have spent 35 years trying to earn a seat in this family, and love you have to earn is just wages. I'm off the clock. Congratulations, you too, I mean it. The anniversary is real. Even when the family album isn't. I set the microphone back in its stand with both the hands, gently, the way you hand off something sleeping. And I walked down the center of that silent room at an ordinary pace, past the churchwomen, past Trish's wet eyes, past Grant looking at Dana, and Dana looking at her wine. Behind me. My mother's voice cracked its lacquer at last. After everything this family has done for you, rising public, unscripted for the first time in decades. And it was my father who stopped it from over by the bar in a voice I hadn't heard since I was a girl. Carol, enough. The last thing I heard as the ballroom doors swung shut was 90 people not clapping. And I want to tell you the truth. It sounded like open water. The door clicked behind me like a key turning, just from the other side. And for once, I was the one who turned it. The parking lot was cool and smelled like cut grass and somebody's cigarette. My hands didn't start shaking until I was actually holding my car keys, and then they shook properly. Honestly, the way hands are supposed to after you set down something you've carried for years. I stood there and let them. There was a gap on the ring where the cottage key had lived, and my thumb kept finding it, the way your tongue finds the place a tooth was. Behind me, the club doors opened once, spilling band music, and I turned half expecting security, or my mother, or both. It was Dana holding her to heels in one hand and a shoe box, sized carton in the other, running badly across gravel in a champagne-colored dress. She stopped a few feet short of me, out of breath, and held out the carton. Inside was Grandma Iris's recipe box, the cards soft at the corners, her handwriting climbing the tabs like ivy. Mom's been staging the cottage for weeks, Dana said. Realtor's coming. She was going to toss these. I took them out of the donate pile weeks ago. I kept a meaning to. She didn't finish. My sister looked at me the way you look at someone across a river. You helped widen that thing you said in there about wages. She stopped again, jaw working. Take care of yourself now. I said you too, Dana. I mean that. She nodded and walked back toward the light and the music toward the game she plays better than me. and I drove home with my grandmother's handwriting writing shotgun, and it's the strangest thing. The whole 20 minutes, I never once turned on the radio. The quiet in that car was the first quiet in my life that didn't have anybody's name on it. Here's the accounting because I promised you honesty, and endings are just invoices with better lighting. The cottage sold in October to a young family from Mentor with 3 kids and a golden retriever. A friend from the county office told me it went for a little over 200 Zolos and every dollar of it into the trust my mother administers. I hope those kids wear the porch swing out. My mother and I have not spoken since the party. She tells a version of that night. I've heard it secondhand where I had some kind of episode, and honestly it's one of her weaker drafts. The room was too full of witnesses. A few church women look at her a beat longer than they used to. That's all. Choirs don't disband. They just lose confidence in a soloist. Dana's wedding happened in April. Lavish and lovely by every account and every photo, and I was not there, and it only ached like weather, not like surgery. My dad calls me from the garage on the first Sunday of the month. We talk about pediatric cases he's read about, and carburetors I don't understand. He never mentions my mother, and neither do I. It's a small bridge rated for exactly 2 people, and we're careful on it. The taxes were paid through December, exactly as I'd promised at that microphone. I finish what I start, even endings. In January, I closed the account I'd used for 6 years of quiet payments and opened a savings account in its place. The bank asked me to name it some app feature, and I typed Iris. And that was the last piece of paper in this story. My 36th birthday landed on a Saturday in the May. I didn't book a restaurant. By 600, my backyard was full. Marisol and her daughter arguing playlist rights. Rose's husband commandeering my little grill. Dee and Jun and half the night shift. My neighbor Mr. Whittaker, who is 81 and brought his own lawn chair, and a jar of pickles he makes himself. We ate at the long wooden table my unit chipped in and built me that spring. 8 seats because Marisol has a dark sense of humor and a good heart. Along my back fence, the zinnias were up and shouting. Grown from the seed packets I'd found, tucked in the back of Iris's recipe box, behind the card for lemon cake. Somebody took a picture of all of us at dusk. I never posted it. Some pictures aren't proof of anything. They're just your life happening at a table where every chair is full. Nobody at that table had more important plans. Nobody at that table has ever needed me to earn a thing. If love keeps a ledger, it isn't love. And if you walk away from that table, somewhere between the door and the open air, you will meet the person you were before you learned to pay. That's my story. 8 chairs, 1 envelope, and a table that finally filled itself. If this reminded you of a seat you're still paying for, ask yourself tonight what it's really costing you. Share this with someone who keeps showing up where it counts. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.